Welcome on to another video. Today we're looking at what if there is a start over on another planet, Iridium series. Now I have looked at a few of what you guys like. It seems you guys like the DHS one a bit more, but you still watch this one, which is very fun for me. But without further ado, subscribe, like, you know the drill, and let's get into the video. Ever since Parent Show kind of did its conquering over here and destroyed that one nation, Velserimor or Velser has done a lot. Basically, it has become the most modernized nation in the, well, not modernized, but the most powerful nation due to its wide layout of, stuff. It very much likes to brag about its achievements, it likes to talk about how strong it is, but it also is a bit humble by saying we're not perfect, we're very strong, yes, but we aren't perfect. But once these two nations started to kind of, well, do some stuff, they just kind of decided to do some other stuff real quick. The main thing that they wanted to do, this guy also changed its, these two, definitely united to make a stronger country. Also, while we were doing other stuff, there was a rebellion, and there still is a rebellion in Constance because of the lack of food, and so they took over the capital and the other regions. I'm not gonna show this guy's capital because it's kind of impossible to, but once this kind of dies down, the rebellion, or if the rebellion kind of wins their fight, more probably it will change. But basically, over here, fighting will begin over the borders, and eventually Velserimor will take over this nation, fully annexing it and adding it to its, countries and counties and provinces. Yes, I have made a counties and provinces map. Counties are the great things, and provinces are like this. Some provinces may have this weird thing in the middle, like, let's say, a river between them and some stuff. But that's only normal. Also, you can see this. Not only is that going to be invaded, but it's going to be annexed. These Velserimor did it just for anything. The new country, Vatjarista has decided to invade one of its friends over here. And after it did so, it managed to garner a lot of territory for itself and a lot of hate as well. The first thing it did was take over these areas. It couldn't move a bit farther because of the border and how slim the border areas were, so they just left that alone. If they were to get through, their next thing would be right here, which they actually did manage to at some point, but I'm not gonna do that just yet. Over here they managed to attack this guy a bit, managed to help themselves to a crossing, which was kind of a very good idea to have a crossing right there. That kind of just did wonders for them. And using that crossing, they will just take over the most populated regions, that being near the rivers and stuff, and eventually they will just take over the entire nation. They will annex it, and then they will go again to war with this guy, gaining these territories, which they previously didn't know how to get. Eventually, this guy was like, "Oh, are we in the way of your expansion?" And Vatjar was like, "Yep, you definitely are," and they made it, but they weren't ready for this guy to try and call their large ally, so they had to kind of talk about the borders over here, and Vatjar kind of lost some territory that they really wanted. Basically, they wanted most of that. What they actually got was mostly this. You may look at this and be like, "Yo, this isn't that much. Why would Vatjar just want that?" Some things. I can't tell you guys some things. Also, this nation kinda united with that one. Buying territory was quite the norm for these guys to clean up the border territories, also to kind of connect their lands. also giving territories for territories is also kind of normal. But this guy here has begun its first invasion, and goddamn, it's of this country. Why would they attack this one? To gain access to these rivers, which is they kind of attacked it quite fast, so that's why it fell so fast. I can only say fast. And basically they started a full-on attack campaign like WICSO, only because they wanted to unite their people. And the people were the two house, and they managed to actually invade 2 countries successfully, while the third one that they tried, a WICSO nation, would full-on just resist them, and they would be sadly be pushed back very, very much. Would be sadly pushed back. But for other nations here, it wouldn't be such a bad thing. Like this guy who was like, yo, I'm just gonna sell this to these guys. They really much need this if they want to get better relations with us. So we want better relations. Let's just do this. And that's what they did. They gave this away. Over here, these guys kind of bought a bit of territory that would kind of actually help them, because after buying all this territory, they would just cut off most of the access for these guys. And also buying this territory was no small feat. They had to sell a lot of stuff to make so much money to actually take those areas and kind of use them. But eventually they would start an invasion of this guy, which would also be accompanied by 2 other nations invaded this guy too, which would be this nation and this nation, because that's the only ones who kind of bordered them. But after they took most of their areas over here, and they took that, these guys kind of just split this up already. They had done this quite fast, so they kind of had the main things done. This nation, the red one, would annex these territories, partly because it really wanted them, and partly because it just for some reason asked to have them. Nobody knows why it would do that, but it's pretty normal. This guy got all of this, while also taking a bit of territory from here, and the rest, as you know, goes to our very large friend. Now, they want to recreate the Tuhow Empire, but what they don't know is that the true Tuhow Empire has actually started to move back over here. They have started to move into these regions, partly because they just wanted to, partly because they just needed to. And also it's because they found out that they actually could do as much as they want with their current population, because their population was quite crowded in the areas they were. So people just started to set up colonies all over the place. So colony over here, colony over here, colony over here, another colony, and then another colony. So they started to build these colonies up, started to connect them, and eventually they started to even kind of connect them to the mainland, which no longer made them colonies. It's kind of just made them. And once they did that, the border kind of just naturally moved all this way. Also, they took all of this not over on me, like not in during the night, but they just took all of that through trial and error. Also because they could. But this nation over here was already doing a lot, so I'm just gonna show you what they were up to. So during their whole unattractive territorial expansion, they just expanded as much as possible. Where they could at least expand. And they stopped around this river. They had no way of crossing it, so why cross something you can't really do anything about? That's what they kind of thought. And this would become their current shape. They would also kind of build up their borders over here just because they really wanted to. Also because they could, because they had these territories over here. But also, the yellow guys really wanted some territories over here. They snaked across, and they got the territories that they wanted. these guys, seeing that these guys would somehow maybe take over the expansion thing here, they just expanded as much as they could over here, and that's all they could do over here. Well, all the way here, because why not, they managed to do some stuff. Also, while we were on the region over here, I'm gonna just quickly take back that, and yeah. The yellow guys do have empire, well, the remnants of it at least, would actually manage to make a colony over here. The colony would be able to kind of know about some stuff over here. But seeing as the other people who are here don't really like them that much, they're like, okay, so here's the deal. We are gonna stay here for a bit, then we're gonna leave you be. Because, well, just some stuff. And also they went all the way over here because they had heard talks of ridges being over here, which weren't really true, but they did meet another nation from where they got a lot of territorial gains, and from that they actually went up north, where this guy had already basically done a lot, but they had managed to kind of take a river. Not fully though. Mostly they just took the mouth of that river. And these guys are trying to kind of just build up a colonial position thing. These guys over here managed to actually stop the colonial expansion once they started to build up their well, nation, and slowly this nation started to turn into a federation. See what I decided to do there? Federation nation? But yeah, they started to take over this whole area, and eventually they decided to take over the bay over here, which is not really a bay, it's more of a lake, but still you can kind of understand what I mean. Eventually these nations would start to, well, do some stuff, especially this nation over here that they just started to create. Basically, they started to do a lot, did a lot, and yeah, did a lot. But eventually this nation, Verseri, started to actually aid this whole region in some things, and what they started to aid with was expansion, and well, making more bronze weaponry, more bronze tools, and basically all of that they could make, they did. They also started to mine more and make more colonies over here. Well, not colonies, but they started to occupy these regions. Their occupations would not go unchecked though, and a lot of the people over here would start to kind of check out what they are doing. Some would get mad at these guys and would start to attack them. Well, Serimor would obviously be a bit stronger than them, so they wouldn't be able to do much. But they did do some things at least, and eventually they did manage to take a lot of territory over here. Eventually they had two rivers they could go down, and they chose to go down both. So they went down this river, found not a lot. They did find some people who had also bronze tools, but that's all they found over here. And then they went all the way over here. And then they found this end of the river nation. And they were very mad. Because these guys, they didn't know about them. Like, no way did they know about them. They had no recollection that there was another people down south of them who actually had a nation, and also they like would expand a lot over here. But this nation would surprise them by actually giving them territory. The reason for this giving of territory was because they didn't really want to deal with the north, but once they did, these guys were like, why don't we just invade them? And that's what they did, they invaded them. These guys were like, yo, we just gave you territory to be in your graces, why would you invade us? And they're like, you're in our territory, boy, suck it. Basically, suck it up. Don't really care. And once they started to do that, they were like, yo, let's just push these guys out. So that's what they did. They invaded, they burnt down a lot of villages, they killed a lot of livestock, a lot of people, and eventually the Iridium people over here would be pushed out, and they would be pushed into what is known as the dead regions, which is this region right here. Not only would they survive, they would thrive by making a new nation. Now this nation is very small and very scattered. They only have a few bits and pieces that they have over here, but they would eventually manage to build up quite a nation and would take on the name Tabir. Tabir would eventually start to take up another name, actually. Something that I will not say yet, but it will come in handy later. Series would also start to do some other stuff here, like annex territories that no other person had, because, well, they could, and also decided to annex nations through political marriages and other things. Over here, it decided to do some stuff like this, just force these guys to be pushed out, guaranteed them help in their like invasions of new territories. That's what they did. They invaded new territories. Eventually, this guy was like, "Yo, can I not be invaded?" And like, the Versanian members were like, "Alright, just become our vassal and that's all we want." And that's what happened. Now, we're 16 minutes in. We still have a lot of time. Let's do quite a lot if possible. So these guys, they started to kind of change their colors. What was their main color before? I do not want to kind of put it down on the ground, but basically the islanders over here declared independence. Wait, actually, you know what? These guys are gonna just do some stuff. Alright, so basically, a rebellion movement started over here because they weren't getting any food. Another rebellion movement did the same over here. Not only would they be rebellion movements, they would be very anti-monarchy. These anti-monarchists would want to make an oligarchy of their own people, basically a senate tree, which has a senate, basically. With that, they wanted to make a nation that would kind of abide by their rules. So they started to do some other stuff, and eventually they started to force a new nation to form. Their cries of rebellion and freedom also reached up into the islands, from where the northern and southern parts attacked the middle parts, which had mostly a lot of stuff. But once they had the northern island, these guys were ready for what they wanted to do, and so they started a full-on rebellion. The Costans, who were thinking, "Oh, this is just a small thing, we can just deal with this later," now thought, "Oh hell, this is not good," as many regions, even down where there's most of the damn population, they didn't expect for the population to be so against them. Basically, they would be overwhelmed by this whole rebellion movement. With the rebellion movement being such a strong movement, nations would start to sell off some territory to it to kind of. They thought it would win. They would be correct. I'm gonna show you why. And basically, they would aid in the making of more rebellion movements and supply these rebellion movements. Why? Well, the Costans had always been, well, since their creation, humble. But the latest king thought, you know what, let's just take all the bronze that the Velsarians have, let's buy it, and let's just do whatever we want with it, and let's become very powerful and brag about it to everyone, and whoever wants to challenge us with that kind of gets a pike up their ass. But as you can see, the rebellion movements would eventually start to overwhelm the nation, and slowly the king would say, "You know what, fuck it, you guys are the rebels, I'm calling in my people, for this is an act of treason. You cannot rebel. This is treason. The king wouldn't be trapped over here. He would be trapped in the south, where, as you can see, most of the southern regions were already falling and eventually just joined the rebellion, partly because they just wanted to, and another part because the Velserians started to supply them too. With the Velserians also helping the guys over here, they actually started to push through the border over here. The king managed to escape to Verserimo, but his entire nation would just start to hate them and kind of split up. By split up, I mean it was split into three. Two parts of the nation would kind of, well, become very habitable. Well, not that, but would be basically different nations. Basically, they would break away, become their own things, and do whatever they wanted. The first nation was the one up north. Well, not the one up north, but basically, yeah, it actually was, because that's where most of the people were. But the second and third were these ones. This was the third, this was the second. Now, the second was so big because it managed to kind of garner a lot of attention by the people and some very good backers. Some of the nobles wanted their own money banks, and basically they just wanted a lot of money. And so they would get that money by any means necessary. That would be by doing their own stuff, and also through annexation. These areas would be annexed, partly because they could be, and the Velserians just invaded and took this territory. Now, they wouldn't be able to fully integrate that just yet, but a entire border war would be fought on the borders over here. Because, well, these guys had a bit over here. These guys wanted everything on their side of the river, so they would invade, basically. And the border war would go great for the guys who had the islands, because they had, like, the better things over here. But once these guys managed a kind of union with this guy, and also changed their entire way of doing war, these guys would start to be kind of pummeled back to their homeland. Now, I'm not saying that the constants aren't important here, or that I'm not going to include them just yet. They are going to be included, because not only would they play a large part in this whole thing, they really much wanted their own territories back, and so they began to also invade these guys. First, they kind of took some of the territories over here, which was promised to them, and then they just started to take the rest. While they did that, they were just feeding intel, doing whatever they wanted, and these guys would eventually take back their own territory. Well, they wouldn't do that much, but they would kind of push over here and start a full-on border war, riverside war with these guys, which would eventually end with these guys making a full-on buffer on the other side of the river. Seeing this full-on buffer being a very good strategic asset, the Constants would also buy a lot of it, and eventually would buy everything on the side of the river. And with this side of the river being theirs, the Constants would sweep their enemies by first destroying their entire ability to defend from the south, as they were already kind of having troubles defending the north because of the very large border. And the Constants managed to actually do a lot, and started to also do quite a ton, because they were using their ships to land troops on the shores, and once that started to happen, people weren't very happy about most of that, and the Constants managed to win the war. After winning the war, they would quickly just demand a lot of territory, partially because they could, partially because they wanted, mostly because they really wanted the territory. They would say, alright, see, the territories beyond this river, to my side, yeah, those are mine. Everything towards your side, that's yours. Now, going over here, see this? Yeah, we're gonna just split it up. Because I just really want to. And seeing this kind of thing happen, everyone would be kind of astonished that Constance would still be able to do such things. Like, they were just a moment ago very weak. They were weakened like hell, and now they're managing to full on bounce back, basically. Well, their attempts to kind of bounce back were quite literally working, but once they started to also do other things like buy more territory, start a few wars, win those wars, kind of maybe lose one or kind of have a draw with one, they started to actually win a lot of battles. And Versenimo's puppet over here was almost their target until they kind of found out that Versenimo would kind of kill them even if their allies hadn't kind of stepped in. And then came the Northern War, which would be basically the war in the north. These guys over here started to invade the Cyan guy because they wanted this one outcropping to be theirs. They would take most of the outcropping except for the northern parts, and that's why it was called the Northern War, because in the north the war wouldn't be that good for the attackers, and in the south it would be very good for them. The Northern War would also include the Constance, as these guys decided to invade the island over here just so they could take some of these territories and build a kind of naval sector over here. The Constance would destroy them, and then they would send out their ships and the navy to attack the mainland over here. The first attack would begin with the taking of a few very important sectors, especially the mouth of the river over there and the mouths of these rivers. Versenimo's ally in this regard would be Vatjar, who kind of were like, okay, we hated you at some point, but now we are okay with you. And Vatjar would gain the trust of its ally, which would also be gained by them, in like vice versa. They would also gain their trust, and the trust would be gained by Vatjar. And basically, these guys would start to attack whatever they could. Over here, Vatjar would manage a lot, and I mean a lot, of wins. These guys would also manage a few wins, and with this whole southern front going on, once it reached this nation, a full-on coalition would form. The coalition of the Begone, because they really wanted this enemy to be gone, and basically they would manage a lot to do with this guy. Eventually, the war would end with these guys taking the north finally, because well, the War of the North kind of ended when the northern areas were taken, and these guys kind of had their fun. Constance and those who joined the war would gain a lot of territory from where they kind of wanted to. This guy would gain territory up to this river because, well, Vatjar kind of wanted these territories, kind of had its eye on them, and once it did get them, they were very happy and they were very grateful for what they did get. Some of the anti-Vatjar gains guys kind of were very angry about this, but what could be said, they kind of didn't take too much. Now, for these guys, they took all of this here because they really wanted a kind of colony in the north, and over here they also took a bit more territory just to limit these guys' gains. And with that, they also decided, you know what, why not? Let's just take these areas, which was called a bit too ambitious, but was listened to. The red guys would take this part of the territory, and these guys would eventually take the rest of the south, from where we see that the empire over here would be very much weakened in the south. It wouldn't have its old territories, which Honestly, was a lot of territory which is lost. It did manage to start another war over here, which it won. It also started another one on over here, which it only managed to win a few territories from, and that's all for them. They didn't manage to do anything else. For this time, they managed to do much of nothing. These two managed to kind of with this guy make a federation over here. This federation would have a name. Wait, let me find my book where I store the names of every country. Oh hell, that's something that shouldn't happen. Oh yes, it's actually not only a federation; it's a confederation. The Confederation of Skream. Skream is basically the two bays over here in this large bay, and this whole bay is called Skream, and they started you know what, let's just call ourselves after this. The two houses would also go to war with this Green Nation. They would win, and with that they would declare that the great empire of Duhau has arisen. With the Duhau Empire saying that it's back and ready for anything, other nations would be like, yo, what do we do? Do we like start diplomacy talks, or what do we do? Because this guy is dangerous, we don't know what it will do, and it also is like very, very much doing something currently. So the Confederation of Skream would gain one more member. These two would also join up in the one. Constance would also start with Vatjar's help a full-on campaign to reunite the Vatjar territories. The territories would be united until this guy would force this nation into its lands, at which Graham and Vatjar would spark up a rebellion over here, which Vatjar would win and regain territories over here. The Vatjar Empire wouldn't be declared, and it would be actually not undeclared, as they would say the Vatjar Empire is something of the past, we are something of the new, and we are the Greater Republic of Vatjar. The Greater Republic is something that nobody was kinda ready for. They didn't know what the name Republic meant. But some nations started to call themselves republics because senates what they had, and Constance eventually said, we are a Greater Republic and we are ready for anything. Velserimor or Versers would take that territory and would start to also look to its northeast. And you need to get some on your minds going. And also would look south, because those two regions are where they haven't explored or taken a lot of territory from. So they would force people to go out here, doing whatever the hell they really decide they really wanted to be done. The main thing that they wanted to be done is some sedimentation. So they would force people out here just because they could, and also because they really wanted it. They would attack anyone who tried to stop them from expanding, and their main goal was to not blow up, but take as much territory south as possible. Eventually, the empire over here would meet up with them through a few regions over here, mainly being the regions that it kind of had. And knowing this people, let's just quickly put on that, and look at that, the Blesian people, the Blesian Empire would be doing quite well over here. Well, damn, seems like the Teshan have kind of gained some very friends over here. Oh hell, I forgot that the Vatjars had that much territory. Oh! Well, hell my ass! Seems like the Costans kinda need to build up their whole things. Wait, let me just real quick. Yeah. Also, I'm just gonna say, over time, the Rostans and these guys would kind of fight over why there's no more Rostans over here and why most of the Rostans are kind of concentrated in this area. The Niger would also start to take over some territories over here, and most of their people would eventually start to do some stuff. The Niger would be very... I'm bamboozled a bit. Quite bamboozled, in fact. The Costans would also kind of take these territories, and the Federation of Skream would also do a bit of Vatjar inclusion, which means these areas would become Vatjar. Well, not these exact areas. It would very much be different. Some areas would have more Vatjar in them, more Vatjar peoples in them than others, and some others would have like less Vatjars, which is very weird if you think of it, but please don't think. Please react, because not only would everyone try to do some stuff over here, the idea of, well, having the Vatjars be like all over the place would be something that nobody would really much want. Eventually the Vatjars would retreat back to their homelands, and the Vatjar people over here who had been here for ages have been finally, and I mean finally, fully been assimilated. With that, I think our episode is done. Yeah, it is. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to do one last thing, that being setting up one little nation over here, because I'm gonna let you guys know real quick. Not only will this nation be very important, it's gonna be important as well, because the Plesians have just given it territory unbeknownst to them. It is not their ally, but it's their enemy. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys liked the video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'm gonna see you guys next time. Bye bye.